Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack
We're
Show.
back.
Man, you know, during the break,
I just
it's always
offended
funny.
everybody a few minutes ago.
We've always talked about this. We need to do a Between the Break show.
Yes. We continued the debate about credit off air, and we already solved the whole conversation, so we're done.
That is correct. But but keep going. I mean, one of the things we're talking about, obviously, from this perspective is, a lot of individuals are out there, and whether they believe in Dave Ramsey or another program, and let me tell you, I believe 100% if you can do something in cash and pay it off right away, that's the way you need to do it. But there is a way to follow his program and be a good steward of credit at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would argue that in America, to be a good steward of your finances involves being a good steward of credit and utilizing credit in a way that is advantageous to you. Now,
right.
I'll give a big out to his strategy in this. The rice and beans mentality, cut up your credit cards and unplug from the credit system, is kind of like the military for some people, in that they just need it to get their life in order, right? Some people need to be slapped with some hard, cold reality of live in a budget, and if that means eating rice and beans, then so be it, right? They need that.
Right.
But from an overall perspective, long-term strategy in being a good steward of your finances, you are doing yourself an injustice, and you're doing your savings and your income an injustice if you aren't utilizing credit responsibly.
Right.
Responsibly. Every person in the listening audience, in my opinion, should have 2 to 3 major credit cards that reward them, that pay them for their usage, that have low interest rates, that they pay off on a regular basis, or carry an extremely minimal balance on a month-to-month basis. I would recommend that to the listening audience, because doing that, when they want to go to you to get the mortgage, now they have an excellent credit history. They have no issue. They have the 3 trade lines you want to see. Life is beautiful. They pay less on auto insurance. They pay less on all their insurance across the board. They get the best rates on all that stuff. So it's not like you can't be a good steward of your finances and utilize credit. You absolutely can. I have a card that pays me to use it on an annual basis. I have a membership fee, and I have positively, massively increased the amount I took in off of it over the cost of the card. They're out there. Just being a good steward of your finances, you can absolutely look for that kind of stuff. If you travel a lot, you can use cards that give you free travel packages. I know families that travel absolutely for free just because they move money through the card. Move it through the card. You notice how I said that, in that they don't carry balances month to month and pay exorbitant interest rates on their purchases. They just move money through the card. Bills that they would have paid cash for, they put on the card and then turn around and pay the card off.
Right.
So it's just passing through the card, and through that they get major benefit. So, we have 2 different people. I want to talk about 2 points here: the no credit person and the too much debt person.
Right.
On credit. One of the things that people don't realize in being a good steward of finances, especially coming through Christmas, that's when cards, get charged up, the budget gets a little blown out, that kind of thing. And now you're looking at having debt. Well, we talked about goals on this show, and it's very much about how you approach your debt is very much about what your goals are.
Right.
If your goal is to buy a house, that's a different goal than to get out of debt. It is. So consequently, you approach how you pay those cards in a different way. All right? If you want to get out of debt, the debt snowball that Dave Ramsey talks about, great. Works wonderfully. Start with the lowest card, pay it off, take that payment you would have had on that card, roll it into the next highest balance, and just keep snowballing that into the largest debt. Great strategy. And there's little psychological victories. People always ask, well, shouldn't I pay off the highest interest rate card first? The difference between the two, not so great, but the psychological victory of paying off one card and being able to say, I've checked that one off, and I take those money and roll it into the next one, it ends up negating it, and it's a lot more rewarding. We need those short-term rewards to motivate us to keep us going, So I like that strategy. That's the get-out-of-debt strategy, right? However, if your goal is to get a home loan, and the time frame you have negates your ability to pay off all those cards, like really we have to be in a new home in 6 months or 12 months, and there's just no way we're going to be able to pay off all of our cards, before that time point and still have enough to put down on the house, move, all the expenses of moving, etc. How do we approach that, right? Very critical thing here. This is where the average street knowledge about how credit works will not save you. In fact, there's a lot of contradictory information out there. What most people don't know is that 30% of their score, 30% of their credit score comes from the amount of debt that they carry on their credit cards. 30%. That is only 5% less than how you pay your bills.
Oh, yeah.
That's huge. You could pay your bills on time every month. That's 35% of your credit score. But carry huge balances, and 30% of your score is going to be in the toilet.
Right.
It's going to be in the tank, right? So here's what people don't know. When they want to purchase a house, the credit scoring model looks for the highest balance first. So in other words, let's say you had 5 credit cards, 4 of them are paid off, and you just rolled all that money over, all of the debt over to the no interest card. And now that card is maxed out, right? Well, that's great for getting out of debt because you're not paying any interest, but it will tank your credit score.
Right.
Because the scoring model is looking for that debt utilization. How much of your credit limit are you using? And it looks at it in increments of 20%. So like the A zone is that first 20%, 0 to 20% of the card. So if you had a credit card with a $1,000 limit and you had under $200 on it, you're in the A zone. You're actually benefiting your credit score by a balance in that zone. And it decreases with each 20% you step up. Once you cross that 40% line, you start it to hurt your score. But Joe, I pay my bills on time. Doesn't matter. That's the first category. This is the second category. So that's where it really can tank you. So
talk about the store cards also.
Yes, this is a boy. I don't want to offend the Macy's employees out there. I won't say it. Macy's, forgive me. I won't mention you.
It's too late.
It's too late. There are some credit. This is why I say stick with only the major credit cards. Avoid those department store cards. The folks that offer you 10% off when you're checking out. If you get a discount of 10% if you apply for our store card. Avoid those because some of those credit card companies don't report your limit.
Right.
They only report your high spending amount
They're
as your
flex
limit.
cards.
So what happens is you end up, going to the department store and they say, "Oh, you've been approved for $5,000," and you never charge more than $300. Well, that's what they report as your limit. So this year when you're very responsible and you only charge $280, the most you ever spent was $300. Well, as far as your credit looks, you're maxed out. And it tanks your credit score.
Yep.
Stick with the major credit cards, Visa, Master, those kind of cards, Discover, etc. And then when you are looking at purchasing a house, if this is your goal, here's your strategy, folks. Pay close attention on this one, right? Your goal isn't to pay off a single card. Paying off a single card and still having a high balance on another card will do nothing for you on a credit score. If you're approaching buying a house and that is your goal, then you will want to pay down the balance of all of your cards as low as you can get all of your cards. You take that money that you have and spread it out over all of the cards to get the percentage of your balance the lowest possible.
Right.
You really want to get all of your credit cards under 30% when you're going to purchase a home. That's the goal. Shoot for under 30%. If you can get it under 20%, that's the A zone. But under the 40% zone, you're still benefiting your score. It's not as huge. It's not as good a benefit as the A zone. But if you cross that 40% line, now you start hurting yourself.
And it goes back to goal setting. It depends on what you're doing, right?
What's your goal?
What's your goal? You're looking at buying a new home for 2014, then you have to understand how to manage your credit accordingly. If you're looking at paying off debt for 2014, you got to manage that accordingly. We talked about the small victories.
Absolutely.
Paying off small items right there. If
You're
looking at establishing for a long term, you're looking at buying for 2015, and you've got no credit. Again, that's a goal. Establish credit for 2014.
Establish credit.
Start about going that.
And Chris, talk about how long you want to see some seasoned credit.
Most all lenders out there want to at least see 12 months. That's sort of the seasoning right there. And the reason why is from an underwriting perspective, you can get a good idea of a person's ability to pay, especially ability to repay, and with the new QM, when you have a 12-month history of repayment. But if you just establish credit, because we see this all the time, I want to buy a home, so I went ahead and got these credit cards, and I've been paying them on time, and I pull their credit, and they've had them for 3 months. Well, if you paid something for 3 months, I applaud you on it. It's great. Pay it for 12 months, and then we'll come back and speak on things. And there's talk even that it might even start going longer because what the mortgage industry is looking at is trying to establish the best qualified buyer, because one of the things that the industry wants to do is to ensure that not only you're in the home today, but but you're in the home 10 years from now if you still want to be in that home.
And Chris,
that's sort of the quality that we're looking for.
We're running low on time, and it's when it gets to the credit side, there's always so much information to give people.
Absolutely.
I know it's a lot of information. Just to give people a concept, when we talk about how to be a good steward of your finances, you can start out with no credit. And hear me, folks, when I say this, no credit is bad credit. And if you have no credit, you have bad credit, then you are paying more for insurance, you're paying more for everything that involves credit or lending across the board, which translates to me as bad steward of finances. So if you are in the no credit situation and you're saying, hey, my goal is to purchase a house, Chris just said you have to have 12 months of history, right? I can sit down with somebody and show them how to have a mix of credit, installment loan, 2 credit cards, utilize those cards throughout a year, and pay a maximum about $100 in interest over the course of the entire year. Right? And I guarantee you that $100 will be paltry in comparison to how much you save on auto insurance, home insurance, everything else in the following year.
I would agree with you.
Well, Joe and Chris, we're kind of coming up towards the end here. What would you like to have people take away from your appearance on the show today?
How about you, Joe? What do you want them to take away from the show?
It really is. Success in life is very much about setting clearly defined goals and working towards those and measuring yourself along the way. So set good financial goals, do the homework, sit down and do it as a family and work towards that. And call a credit expert to help you. 281-914-4116.
Wow.
That is great. Well, my goal for 2014, tell everybody, is set your goals, put them down, put them on a board, make it happen, be a good steward of credit right there. Also know that we're in a very strong market and, more importantly, find a great organization to get involved with 2014. Until next year, we will talk to you soon.
And you've been listening to the Real Estate Rat Pack. The question is, who's Frank, who's Sammy, who's Dean, and who's the other guy?
Chris is Frank,
I'm
he's
Dean.
Dean, and I'm Sammy.
Yes, is that right? Yeah.
So tune in to the really big show every Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on 100.7 The Word, KKHT.